All right. We got a video. We're going to watch a video today. We haven't been watching them as much lately. This one's from Space Tomato. It's called Star Citizen 320.x ended up being bigger than expected.
You know those YouTube comments that say, "Hey George Tomato, why doesn't Star Citizen take one whole patch to just fix all the bugs?" Well, you know what happens when they decide to do that? Well,
Fix all the bugs, Tomato.
honestly never know because they're never going to do that. But the newest patch to the game might be about as close as you can get, which is a bummer because it's still pretty buggy. The jury is out on long-term stability, but things are looking promising that this update is bringing some fixes to stability, performance, and quality of life. We've got anti-combat
I don't think they've said anything about stability, but performance, like little quality of life bugs and things like that, sure. But stability, they haven't said anything about.
logging, MFD persistence, and HDR support, as well as Arena Commander updates looking pretty good to bring players more immediate gameplay. All that, the long-awaited Hull C, and some very anticipated ships and gameplay coming in subsequent 3.20 patches is actually making it look like a pretty interesting next couple of months for Star Citizen. But it all really hinges on the actual stability of the gameplay, which has been hampered by some early update problems on the back end, but ultimately does seem to be pretty solid outside of inventory issues. So let's jump in.
Bro, people can't log into the game. The whole system goes down for periods of time. I don't know. Like, I actually couldn't play because I had my helmet off, right? So inventory issues are pretty important, but that's not to say that the initiative that it seems like they're doing isn't good, right? But still not happy about the pace in which they released this patch because it's not ready.
And see what all the changes are coming to the 3.20 branch of updates, and if they're enough to warrant jumping back in. Thank you for coming to my Tomato Talk.
Ooh, is it? So I'm getting that question a lot. Is it worth jumping back in? I mean, that is the easiest no of all time right now.
Let's start by taking a look at the big ticket items, the obvious additions. In locations, we've got Seraphim Station, a fully supplied cargo port stationed above Crusader instead of Port Olisar. The old station was all we had back in the first days of the alpha. Ever since 2.0, it's been the one constant throughout every update, so it's sad to see it go. But now for Crusader space lovers, you'll have full services in the Crusader planetary system with a spawn point and everything you'll need, which was sorely needed.
I think that's something that's needed when more things happen in terms of like he said, Crusader lovers. I think that exists to some extent of like, I like to spawn at Crusader. I personally do. That's my favorite spot. But one thing that I know was always their intention that they've really failed to deliver on over the years, and this is something that actually I think you could have set the expectations for them to do something like this, especially with not having left the Stanton system for so many years. That the plan always was to, like, you know, sometimes quantum travel is kind of a pain. It takes a while. The plan was always to make it so when you're living, working, doing missions, mining, cargo hauling around Crusader, let's say, there's so much for you to do, and there's so many things going on there that you don't really need to leave and go to Hurston. You don't really need to leave and go to ArcCorp. But that's really not been the case for the way the game has progressed since they made those statements many years ago. I think it was Luke Presley a long time ago. But that's not really happened. In terms of content delivery, in terms of grounding you to a certain location. I mean, guys, not to bring Starfield up to every Star Citizen conversation because I think it's super cringe, but even the smallest things, like going to, I don't know, Brio's Breaker Yard, right? And there's no NPCs there, right? So there's nobody walking around, there's nobody working there, but as simple as walking around a Brio's Breaker Yard, which is a salvage yard, but also some seedy things happen there. NPCs with that kind of personality that would talk to you and say, go get, stay away from here, or, oh, you're looking to sell some scrap? Go see whoever at the scrap, like just simple things. These are simple things. This isn't crazy asks. So, and those small things like ground you in the place that you're in. Ooh, like I like the style of this place, or whatever, right? And that's not even mentioning like the complete lack of content, and reputation building, and because I think what grounds you in an area isn't necessarily tons and tons and tons of gameplay, although that's a part of it, but it's also grounding you in the style of the location, and does that fit your character or your own personality, things like that. So yeah, the immersion just
Moving
isn't
on to
there.
gameplay, we have another
important.
addition to the ongoing cargo refactor. Now, instead of just one SCU boxes being used across the game, we have 2, 4, 8, 16, 24, and 32 SCU boxes.
Has anyone seen
There
a
isn't
4?
a ton of
I haven't seen a 4 SCU box yet.
functionality connected with these boxes just yet, but they work how you'd expect. They are part of a larger update which I'll cover in a dedicated video later on, but for now the multi-tool has been buffed to be able to move any of these boxes. They can be stored and transported by ships, and of course looted and sold.
You guys think that in 320.x with vehicle tractor beams, the multi-tool buff is going to go away quite quickly? Do you think we're going to get the extra multi-tool gun as well, or the tractor beam gun as well? Possibly.
Specifically and maybe more excitingly from the Hull C, which we'll get to. Next up in gameplay, we have the new salvage mission coming from a new faction called the Tar Pits. This mission offers a more focused salvage opportunity based around hull scraping, but it is a criminal mission. So if you want to stay away from crime stats, you'll probably avoid this one. But it's all about covering up the fact that the ship belongs to some other gang members.
I mean, you're not going to get a crime stat if you succeed.
Hence the scraping off the hull. It's very on the nose, but the point is quite clear. This generally boils down to scraping the hull of a ship before a timer runs out. It's a simple and easy way to experience some new gameplay and get paid, and a good way for them to test the feature, assuming you can get a Vulture, which I can confirm is available to purchase at New Deal in-game in 3.20.
For like 1.3
Mining has been the most developed industrial game loop for some time, but this year it has...
I know I know you don't want to make videos about all the problems in the game, but the hull scraping mission doesn't work because hull scraping is broken. Mining is affected majorly by server instability. What are we experiencing right now? I haven't mined because I haven't had the true mining experience that we're supposed to feel yet. I haven't seen it yet. I know what it's supposed to look like. I felt it maybe for little blips, but I haven't been able to.
Become an actual profession and source of diverse and engaging gameplay. With 3.20,
and this is the single best update they've done. This was, in my opinion, I love mining, so I'm biased here, but this to me is the best update they've done because it's literally has no flaws outside of the server, right? Like the on paper, it's just so good.
that trend continues. Mining sees updates to mineral distribution across various rocks, continuing the changes from 3.19. A change to the way instability functions, scaling it up by rock size, adding more depth to the mechanic and more predictability without lessening the difficulty. And there's a little UI change that actually makes a pretty big difference. Now you can see just how much SCU the rock you found will supply to you.
Oh,
This
shit,
last
I never
change
noticed
makes
that.
logistics much easier when you're trying to calculate how many minerals you're going to get from a rock and whether it's
Yeah, and then you could just do the math on the percentage.
worth attempting.
That's awesome.
In gameplay updates, you'll also notice ground vehicles greatly improved in the feel and handling they provide. While the system may still not be perfect, vehicles seem to stick to the ground and react to it in much more engaging and telling ways. You can now start to actually feel like you're bouncing along a bumpy moon surface, rather than just telling yourself that to feel better. There still isn't very much of a reason to use ground vehicles in many situations, but when it does come up, it's going to be a nicer experience now. And I think we've got many more ground scenarios coming, with the various locations being worked on and the ground AI vehicle and perception
Copium.
updates we've been reading about. Then there is the bulk of the 3.20
Believing CIG.
update, Arena Commander. For almost a decade, this mode has sat to the side at various levels of importance
Oh
in
my
the
god,
development.
that was me. This is me. That's me right there. Look.
Almost a decade, this mode has sat to the side
Look. That's me.
at various levels of importance in the development, but it never made much progress on its own. As a set of in-fiction video games, Arena Commander and Star Marine are accessed via sim pods that can sit in your hangar, hab, or ship, and allow you to play instant action simulations of various activities in Star Citizen's real world, but in this virtual environment. This is meant as a way to offer quick and easy gameplay, as well as opportunities for players to not worry so much about death.
Yeah,
It's a great concept for a slow MMO, especially with long travel times, but it was in a miserable state for a pretty long time.
Oh my god.
With 3.20, the two modes are being combined into a single Arena Commander, a
By the way, guys, rest in peace, Gun Rush. I'm gonna miss it.
one-stop shop for all PvP and PvE quick action. This is the place to go if you want to just hop online for an hour or two and kick back with some actual gameplay. It's essentially Battlefield meets Star Citizen. You have some classic game modes like racing, dogfighting, and FPS battles, and semi-private
got my
lobbies
badge,
and
though.
matchmaking services, hosted on a redesigned front end with much better access and visibility of information. You've got old racetracks updated to new racetracks coming in Atmosphere, which makes a huge difference, different new racetracks, new dogfighting maps, new FPS maps, new FPS modes like Gun Rush, a kill with each weapon sort of game type, and single weapon battles to see who has the better skill.
Are they gonna do the single weapon battle thing? Because they got rid of that pretty quickly in PTU.
Tank battles now offer the chance to group up
Is that
for
on the
ground
schedule?
combat fights using the Nova Tank and soon the new Tumbril Storm in a
Oh my god, how many more sneak peeks of the Tumbril Storm are we gonna need to see before this thing actually comes in the game?
free-for-all or team-based fight, though they have already been temporarily rotated out because they just aren't working well yet. When it is consistent though, it's going to be a godsend considering how long it can take to set up tank battles in the PU, and that's really
I mean, that was an interesting thing for him to say. I'm not sure if it's because they're not working yet. I mean, yes, there's bugs and things like that, but I think doing the experimental mode in like waves is a way to get focused feedback on everything, right? So, yeah, you're getting all your focused feedback on Gun Rush all of last week. This week, I'm not sure what the schedule is because I don't care because it's not Gun Rush. But each week you'll be able to get your focused feedback on what are the issues, and you're going to be getting a lot of just data on what the issues are, and be able to fix them. So yeah.
what the focus is here. Arena Commander
yeah, I
is meant
talked
to
about it.
offer bite-sized pieces of Star Citizen for easier experience and testing purposes in private server environments. It's always been there, but the 3.20 update is updating it back to certified playability, unfortunately not with the private servers part of that. There's more to come in the next couple updates that'll bring
Are private servers set to come in a .x or like in a future
In
patch?
private servers and
Have they said
multi-cruise ship
anything?
support, but in my experience in 3.20 so far, it is now playable. Still a far cry from good, but it's playable. You're gonna run into desync and gun glitches that break up the fun, but you're gonna have a good time now. Now, you may have caught I said testing in Arena Commander. This is also going to now act as the testbed for new features and functionality that might require a bit more of a gradual rollout. Experimental modes, which includes gun rush and tank battles, also will host these features. The first we'll be testing is Master Modes, the new flight model that focuses on improving the combat experience while defining a window of high velocity speed known as Navigation Mode.
I think Master Modes is the one that's coming now, but the first one we tested was Gun Rush, so.
Essentially, this takes us
Master
back to
Modes
the
this
flight
week?
model pre 3.0 when you would have higher cruise speeds and lower SCM combat speeds. Now it's defined by flipping an arbitrary switch on your ship, but the idea is the same. Combat speeds are meant to be slowed down quite a bit so that players can enjoy and understand what's going on more, while higher speeds will be reserved for navigation, but will limit your shields and weapon usage. There's going to be a ton of feedback taken on this feature and a lot of testing going into it before it's implemented into the game, so make sure to get into this mode and test it out for yourself and see what you think. I'll be covering...
How long do you think Master Modes will sit in Arena Commander? Because at this moment, it's indefinite. It has to be. Because the only Master Modes test we've had is with a singular ship. So it's got to be... I think it's going to be... I think Sharp is probably right. I think it's going to be minimum probably until maybe this time next year. Right? There's so many ships. There's so many things to figure out. It's a lot, man. It's a lot to nail down. Yeah, for once, Sharp is right. Can you believe it?
This mode in a later video as it develops more, but I'm not much of a combat person, so I don't really have too much going on in this race.
I think it's minimum a year if they do it right and give it the amount of time that they need to balance it. But at the same time, does anybody want to wait a year for it? Or would you rather them get it good enough and just throw it in the game? Like there's some, I think there's value in doing it either way. I think some people will just be like, who cares? And just do it, you know, what is it? Rip the Band-Aid off, something like that, and just do it. You know, this is the way you're going to go. Just do it. I think some people would think that, and others would just be like, take your time, make sure it's right, and all that stuff. But I don't think they're ever truly going to know all the feedback, all the data that they would need to get it right without just ripping the Band-Aid off and putting it in the PU. Because again, there's so many variables, and Arena Commander can't give you all those variables. So they're going to have to put it in the PU at some point. So while Sharp might be right, I think in order to actually get it right, they're going to have to put it in the PU, because Master Modes has to affect things like cargo hauling and mining and salvaging and, you know, all these other things that just aren't in Arena Commander. You know what I mean? So it just doesn't make sense to not do it.
Now that wraps up the major feature additions for this patch, but it's not even close to everything included. And don't forget, we'll have to follow up 3.20 with 0.1 and 0.2 as well. Now let's start with new ships. The Hull C is the star of the show in 3.20, bringing in a whopping 4,600 plus SCU carrying capacity,
Yeah.
absolutely dwarfing the previous cargo heavyweight.
Oh my god.
This is a
That's
big
insane.
addition for 3 reasons. One, it's been on the backlog for almost a decade. This is a good older ship to get out of the way for its variants to have a base.
Wow.
2, this begins to change the scale of Star Citizen and force more focus on cargo and the economy. It isn't happening as fast as many of us felt it should, but cargo hauling and the economy are changing to match this scale change.
Economy is an interesting word to call it, but I do think that what he said is exactly how I feel. Of the scale change, you can feel, like you can legitimately feel like you're moving uh, and doing this like really long haul. I don't know, when I've used the Hull C, I felt like I was like a proper cargo hauler for the first time. Like it felt right, and it made sense. Outside of like the insane design choices on how to interact with the cargo system in the Hull C, um, the point A to point B feeling with this ship felt really good. Felt really, really good. I thought it was very nice. But it's that friction that they've been talking about on ISC the last couple weeks that I'm not having as much fun with the Hull C. I think it's really crazy to have to go in and out of your ship multiple times just to get, there's no MobiGlass app, there's nothing in your ship that you can, order or buy cargo with or manage it with. Or even just like initially at the docking collar, things like that. I argue that the Hull C, yes, is flyable in game and usable in game, and there is a very placeholder cargo system. I would argue this is very much a performance test and general bug. Like, this is the classic tier 0 implementation of, are you able to spawn the ship? Are you able to buy cargo and attach it? And are you able to sell cargo and remove it? And if those 5 things you can answer the words yes to, which unfortunately since the live release and just before it, some of the answers were maybe instead of yes or no. And I think it's still that way a little bit. If those answers are yes, CIG goes, let's make a ridiculous commercial, ship it to live, $500, right? And I don't think that that's necessarily fair because I'm pretty sure in some sort of communication, they've kind of communicated that this was more of a, hey, will this thing break our servers and the economy? And since it hasn't done either, they were like, all right, thumbs up. But I do think that there's a lot more that needs to happen to make this experience real. And it's got to get past this very, all right, those 5 things work, who cares? I don't think they can move on from the system yet without resolving some of that insane loop that you need to go through. You're jumping through so many hoops just to get cargo. Not really fun.
Over the next few patches and years, we'll see missions, features, and initiatives starting to change the core of Star Citizen's industrial backbone. Freight elevators, tractor beams, hangar storage, it all mainly begins with this. And number 3, the existence of this ship proves out a lot of unique technology that'll make other ships more functional. Just a few features with knock-on effects due to this are docking, ship modularity, and physics grids. All that good news being said, as alluded to earlier, we'll need to keep waiting for most of this to matter. The economy remains virtually unchanged right now, information visibility is still at a low, and the only thing changing in the actual hauling process is the Hull C using a cargo loading timer when picking up from cargo ports.
Which I love, and honestly, I hope it's way more like refineries, where it's like hours, right? You're loading thousands of cargo, and you take a mission. You go and do some other things, maybe do some more. I feel like here's my vision of like cargo hauling, right? Is you take a huge mission for your Hull C at Port Tressler, let's say, and the loading time could be 2 hours. And then in the meantime, you take this ship, the Freelancer Max, and you are doing from the cargo deck at Port Tressler the smaller cargo hauls down to the planet's surface or the moons in the area, right? Because there's basically 2 parts to the loop. The loop is the big hauls between all of the ports, and then there's the smaller what do they call it in like real life? on Earth, they call it like last mile deliveries, right? So like your Amazon delivery or your UPS or whatever that we have here in the US. So that's what your, 100 SCU ships. That's what even your Hull C, your 600 SCU ships are going to be dealing with, right? And I think while you're waiting for your big ship to get filled up, you can do all these smaller cargo hauling missions. So cargo haulers are going to be, rocking and rolling with all different ships all the time based on maybe what type of haul you're moving. I don't know. So for me, it's okay if the cargo timer is really long, because you should have other options in the meantime, right? Because how long is it going to take to load 100 SCU on a Freelancer Max now? It's like 3 boxes, you know what I mean? So it's not too difficult anymore.
This is an interesting mechanic. It is a placeholder for NPCs and a mechanic meant to affect all ships, not just the Hull C. So it's more a test than an actual implementation.
And hey,
thus, most players won't even notice the implementation of this monumental ship. But I think that's okay. A good addition with some flaws, but it'll be a while before it really matters. Then there is the Mirai Fury LX.
I think that's a good point too. Does it even really matter if there's no economy? Right? Do we need to get the system feeling perfect if there's no economy? And I think the answer to that is absolutely yes. Right? So you want to get the experience that the player is engaging with to be as smooth as possible for when there's actually a economy to engage with, because you don't want the bugs or the 1,000 hoops you got to jump through to get in the way of the fun. The economy should inform what you do, but the actual thing that you're doing is what's supposed to be fun. So the lack of completeness of the Hull C is a huge problem, in my opinion. If and only if this is where they leave it for the short term. The short term would be between now and 321. That's how I feel. Is from now to 321, something about the Hull C has to change. How we buy cargo.
Not much to be said, other than it is a racing variant for the Fury, unveiled earlier this year. We've been hearing about this in monthly reports over the months, so scratch one off your unannounced variants bingo card. Take a chance to check this out though, if not now, then during IAE later this year. With some new flight changes in 3.20 which kind of change up the effect you have when flying through atmosphere, it can be fun to low fly. Now that's it for ships in 3.20, but in about a month we'll likely see a 3.20.1 update with a number of additions to the game.
Maybe
a couple things we already know will be there are the Tumbrel Storm tank, a small rapid strike vehicle that'll make a good addition to tank battles, and the A1 Spirit, a small to medium 1 to 2 person light bomber from Crusader, introducing
Morph is seething
size 5 bombs to the game, and the first of a few new variants from Crusader Industries. The second of which will be the C1 Spirit, likely coming with Alpha 3.20.2, probably a month later in November, but could always be coming sooner. I am particularly excited to see if this ship might become my daily driver over the current MSR. These ships will be good additions.
I love the look of this thing. This was one of the ships that I had a very hard time not melting something and buying with store credit. Like, it's a Cutlass level cargo, the C1, I believe. But I passed just because how is it any different than any of the other ships? It just looks cool, you know? And I'm also with Tomato on that I would like this to be one of my daily drivers, but what that takes is a reason to use it, and that would be cargo missions. So until we have those
to the game and likely popular daily drivers.
Really,
but then there is the long-awaited Argo SRV, Actually a significant and late addition to the patch expectations for some 3.20.x only just mentioned to us this past week.
Yeah,
The
man.
SRV not only introduces the idea of a tugboat in space able to haul away old ships, mineable asteroids, and derelict wrecks, with it comes the functionality of vehicle
Do we know if it's mineable asteroids and derelict wrecks? I don't know if we know that yet.
tractor beams,
I hope
which
so.
will affect other vehicles like the Nomad, Connie Taurus, Cutlass, Hull C, Argo MPUV, and more. The SRV is another expected big addition of the year, and it's good to see it landing in the 3.20 branch. Along with these ships though, I think we'll see a couple other significant surprises over the course of the 3.20 patch.
All right,
but the most important thing we can hope for is stability, especially after the first half of this year. With a new code base for the first time since the beginning of 2023, 3.20 has the potential to fix a lot of annoying bugs and offer the most stable play experience we've gotten so far this year. Let's take a look at the bug fixes, little bits, quality of life improvements, and stability plans for this new update.
Minor additions, not really, though. Okay.
Alright, most interesting thing first, anti-combat logging measures. This came out of nowhere, but answers
I think the server crash recovery quality of life update is the most important.
some loud and long pleas for protection from players who simply disconnected right before death. Now the game will persist your ship and body for a short period of time after you log off, so make sure you're somewhere safe. This, of course, will be abused and broken at first, but it's a good start.
It really isn't. I mean, it's being abused in the best way possible. So there's lots of issues with the game where logging out and logging back in resolve some of those issues, right? And if you just kind of punch your party member, which you won't get a crime stat for, you are considered in combat now. And so let's say you have a really bad audio bug. Well, guess what? Logging out, logging in fixes that. And what this does is it keeps you in the game, and then you're able to log out and log back in and be in the exact same spot where you were left when you left the game. So a seat of a ship, surface of a planet, you're going to be there. So it kind of is a frictionless way to log in and log out in comparison to future or previous releases and stuff like that. So
you know what else deserves a good start? Moderation tools, which we are finally starting to see. Now players will be able to restrict comm calls to just friends and hide notifications from certain players. Again, not much, but it's a start.
It's definitely not much, and it's definitely not the moderation tools we need right now.
Another quality of life improvement are all quantum travel HUDs being virtually aligned now. No more weird pitching around to get quantum travel to start, and better visibility to go along with the improved group quantum travel display. We are due for a complete overhaul of the system soon, but this may be some early preparation. Speaking of readability, the mobiGlass menu is now darker to make it easier to see in more lighting scenarios, despite accessibility taking a bit of step back. More on that later.
Oh, I wonder what he means
for crafting,
by that.
empty RMC cans can now be made in the Vulture and Reclaimer. Might not sound big, but it was really annoying not being able to easily FPS salvage if you wanted to. In addition to the mining changes we've already discussed in this video, the pilot of a mole can now get a mining HUD readout that shows information about the targeted rocks. MFDs will now persist per vehicle, another long requested quality of life feature that leads to more customizable ships that actually feel like yours. This may also be some early work preparing for an update we know is due soon. With Gen 12 added to the game in 3.18, we are already seeing graphical benefits in the form of HDR functionality. A key tool for high contrast performance for those who actually have true HDR monitors, this will be a good setting to see mature over time for a space game. Along with global illumination being developed for the future in the form of ray tracing.
I never got to experience the HDR for some reason. I don't know. I have an HDR. I have two HDR monitors, but
in 3.20, Star Citizen continues to improve its visuals. Speaking of visuals, Microtech has been improved. I did not capture 319 footage of the planet, but Terada did. His video is linked down below if you want to see more. The planet looks much better with the new changes, and you should expect to keep seeing updates like this to planets and the
It looks the same. I'm confused.
the R-Corp clouds in 3.19 over time. And there's still so much more, folks. The destroyed drug stash missions in the bunkers received some major fixes and performance enhancements. Cargo manifests have been added to all bounty, assassination, and salvage missions, building the complexity of the game into all corners of it and expanding the possibilities of each mission. With more
Dude, people are making so much money. It's insane.
changes like this, your combat missions will offer repair, refuel, engineering, salvage, cargo manipulation, and medical jobs as well. Combat missions have seen the addition of almost all combat-capable ships added to build diversity into the combat encounters around the game. So you're looking at larger...
The thing is the combat encounters at bounties, it's such a wide breadth of ships that, like, sometimes it's just super... Like, my first bounty was an Argo Mole. It was super
combat
weird.
ships with the ability of carrying cargo around like they just have an ongoing manifest. It's led to some really cool possibilities. My org, GII, which you can sign up for down below, is now running weekly events where we attack large-scale bounties and take all the cargo they were carrying. It pays out hundreds of thousands per player, even in groups of 10, making for some pretty diverse gameplay, making use of just this single small change to the game. It's a pretty good one in my opinion. Climbing and clambering was improved with a ledge grab function that allows players to stop their fall mid-air.
Yeah.
While not seeming to work as wide as I would hope, this will be one of the first features shown off at CitizenCon's partnered development panel last year.
I believe this is the first one.
That is actually making it into players' hands.
Which is... It's not great. You know, it's not the best thing of the things that they showed there. But it is one of the things. So it still gives hope that new star map or the scanning, FPS scanning, things like that are still a possibility.
It took longer than expected and, as I said, seemingly doesn't allow mantling across.
What it wasn't FPS hull scraping the first one. That's the first one of people moving to like the actor feature team moving to Squadron and then coming over was my understanding. But control hints, yeah, is actually the first one. That would make sense, Phil. Quality of life, little hints for the finished game, in our not so finished game. But I think what I mean is the first one would being like from what we saw at CitizenCon of a little bit of the scanning and the quantum travel changes, things like that.
All surfaces like we'd hoped, but it's an improvement in climbing. There is a new UI update to much of the menu, making it more contrast heavy and visible, and contextual hints are more prevalent throughout the game. That being said, as I mentioned before, accessibility has taken a step back with this update. Some things are more contrast heavy, but font sizes have gone down. UI elements seem to be lighting up less, such as with the cruise control identifier, and some other changes in the menu seem to be making things more difficult for those who are hard of sight. I hope to see accessibility features in Star Citizen improve along with the rest of quality of life we're seeing. A server crash recovery update was implemented, which should have your ship respawning back at whatever station you last hailed, if your server does crash and you get a 30k. This will probably be much better than the ship going back to your home location as it used to be. Finally, a few more quality of life improvements. Party members who shoot at each other will no longer be immediately marked as hostile to other players, continuing the reliance on player parties, which will likely become crews, in assigning responsibilities, permissions, and communications. Screen notifications have been added to notify players which faction owns the territory you are entering when trespassing. Enemy AI are supposedly no longer slow to react. From what I've seen so far, AI might not fight back, but they are definitely moving, approaching, and sometimes flanking players, definitely mixing up the combat scenarios in 3.20. In other bug fix news, the invisible player bug which plagued the last two patches has seemingly been remedied. Oh,
it hasn't.
And my favorite, no more broken wrists when leaving a ship in 0G. Transitions from 0G to gravity and back are perfect. It's very...
They're not, but they're better.
Nice, and also a bit jarring to see it work so well, to be honest. And for global events, it seems we'll be seeing Jumptown here very shortly, and Siege of Orison likely in 3.20.1 after recent improvements have been implemented along with the Orison City missions that were removed.
Dude, I am dying to see what they do with this. This is a mission that I was really excited for the first Siege, and I am way more hyped for the second one because the main thing that they called out were people not being able to skip. Right? With people not being able to skip ahead, that was the call out that they made about it. That makes me excited for it because that was my big gripe about it. It was like, dude, I'm here on the first platform and we haven't completed the first platform tasks yet, and people are doing the last one. I hated it.
Moved in 3.19. Those Orison City missions will be added with some new locations we've been seeing recently, and additional FPS missions along with them in 3.20.1 or .2.
Cool. How is performance? Okay, I guess.
And then there are the most important questions: stability, desync, and general performance. I can say this: the game runs smoother than it ever has when it comes to my own frame rate. I still have some issues in cities, but I've been playing all week and just finished a 14-hour play session, which you can find here on my YouTube channel. And I experienced 130K, one crash to desktop.
I saw a lot of funny images of Tomato with all sorts of stuff going on.
And mostly smooth frame rates.
From this stream.
Little instability, like things not loading in, UI taking some time, and general desync was still around, but not nearly as bad as 3.19, and I won't even get into 3.18. I will say right now, there is a miserable inventory bug going around that makes the game almost unplayable, but outside of that, it seems about normal. We've seen an immense amount of back-end server issues on day one that was seemingly going...
That insane teleportation desync was like, seems about normal. Everything's okay. Oh my god. How did we get to this place?
To be avoided for the 3.18 post-mortem just a couple weeks ago. And an additional patch is coming soon to fix some major problems. But 3.20 seems to be the best patch we've had this year in terms of playability. And it's offered the same amazing initial experiences offered by the cargo refactor and persistent entity streaming at the beginning of the year, but in a much more stable and enjoyable group environment, which goes a long way.
Yeah, I will say, like, it might sound funny for Tomato to say it's been the most fun or the most stable, but when I've been in game, it's been really fun, right? So when I'm not dealing with issues, which is rare, it's been fun. I really like a lot of the changes that have come into the game. It's made what I enjoyed doing even better. But most of the time, it's tough to experience that joy because of all the other issues that are going on. So it's hard to hear Tomato say some of these things, but they are true to some extent. It's just some people can't log in. Some people are having, well, we're all having inventory issues, right? So it's like, I want to make videos like these, but I can't because I can't say the good without saying the overwhelmingly huge basket of bad, right? That has come with the patch. And it's what made it even more frustrating was that they called out quality of life as something that they wanted to do. And yeah, like I'm reading in chat, there's more issues than we had in 3.19. The known issues list is not only long, but there's major problems with it. Major problems with it. And that's so when I've played, I've had fun, but I've been less motivated to play because of all those issues and because of just the way they've communicated things. It was like I was excited and then I was let down more than I normally would be.
That being said, I still don't think it's there for players who left after 3.17 to return to. I'd check back with 3.20.1 in about a month's time, which should have some more time to cook and stabilize with the QA and include a couple additional vehicles.
Yeah.
There are a lot of edge cases and special interactions that might or might not be working. And while this patch is feeling good, it does feel rushed after such a long PTU cycle ending in a relatively bug-heavy push to live. We may not know the reasoning for why that would be, but it will likely be another week or two before we can call whether it was time or not. If you're interested in keeping up on the performance of the patch, development of the game...
Brother, we needed 30 seconds to know that it wasn't time to go live.
What features and ships are coming
We
next,
don't need
or
a couple weeks.
more Star Citizen content like this, you can subscribe here. As a brand new patch, I appreciate this one. It doesn't bring much new to the game, especially the PU. Many of the features like EVA T2, scanning, and radar are nowhere to be seen, although I am glad to see tractor beams in here finally.
Yeah,
but you know what?
cool.
A lot is about to change with this game, and 3.18 put us in a frozen state for half a year, if not more. I hope this patch gives players a solid foundation to experience what PES has done for the game so far.
Bro, I mean, this is the last 2 years have been consistently the same. Of like 317, it was all a whole year. This is basically 318 the whole year. 2 years in a row. It's rough. I think this is better than last year for sure. But that PES, all the problems that they've had with it has really made this year not be as good as it could have been, and it sucks.
Star Citizen really is in this pre-server meshing state, and just some good agreeable gameplay in general. I'll be streaming the patch weekly, hosting guests to share their thoughts.
I hope he wears this every time he streams.
On the update, publishing videos about the near future, and more across this channel and my second, Space Tomato 2. So if you want to keep up with the game, consider checking them out. And join me on my podcast for the real thoughts of many of the SC content creators you know. I hope 3.20 treats you well this fall. I hope you learned something new in this video, and I'll catch you in the next.
Cool. He's a gem. I don't know how he sees the world so differently sometimes. Like, he's just able to see the good in everything. I don't know how he does it. He is the sweet to our salt here. So we will always default to Tomato to tell us what's good. We don't always have to agree, and I certainly didn't a lot in that video, but yeah, I think that's the best way to describe him. He's a very kind soul and a great person. So I love Tomato, and yeah, he tries to stay positive and sees the good things, and I can't help but see the bad things. So it's like, it's like a brain worm.